So in my trip to Seattle, I saw just all sorts of cool, crazy, ridiculous headphones. High-end stuff. And a question might arise of, okay, you got to go in Seattle and see all this stuff and try it out yourself. Did you buy anything? Yes, I did. But it might not be what you expect. Out of everything I saw, everything that I did, everything that I got to try out, what did I end up buying? These little AKGs. This is the AKG Q701, the Quincy Jones model. Look at that. Come on. There you go. Quincy Jones, yes. Those of you who are in the know, you're probably going like, what? But those of you who aren't, this is basically the AKG K701, a classic headphone. And they did a collaboration with Quincy Jones to make the Q701. And it's basically the same thing, but the colors are a little different. The headband's a little different, and also it has a detachable cable. So, and made in Austria. So cool. It's cool. This is a used pair that I got at Hawthorne Stereo over there in Seattle. So big shout out to Hawthorne Stereo. Amazing place. It's like a used. They had some new stuff there, I'm sure, but they have a lot of cool used hi-fi gear there that you can just kind of, anything that's out there on the floor, you can ask them to demo, and they'll bring them out, put you in a sound isolated room, and you can try anything. And that's what they did for me. This was just hanging on the wall, amongst a bunch of other headphones. I'm like, hey, let me try that. And then they put me in a room. They shut the door. It was totally sealed and isolated, and I got to sit there for 10, 15 minutes and just chill out to these headphones, and it was a good time. So Hawthorne Stereo, awesome place. Can't recommend enough. The guys there are super nice and they're fun to talk to. If you want to talk audio with them, talk shop, ooh, they're a blast to talk to. So yeah, go check out Hawthorne Stereo. But yeah, we got the Quincy Jones here, Q701s. Cool little headphones. This is kind of a callback. This is a model that doesn't really exist anymore. They don't make them anymore, but you can find them pretty readily on the used market, Amazon, even eBay, whatever. They're still around. You can still pick them up. There's quite a few of them. In fact, I think that the regular K701s are a little bit harder to find than the Qs, but for all intent and purpose, the Qs are a little bit of an upgrade because you got the detachable cable when the original Ks did not have the detachable cable. And then everything else is basically the same. As far as I know, they measure almost identically. So you just get a slightly better built because of the detachable cable. It looks probably pretty familiar, and that's because it shares the exact same design methodology as the current AKGs. This is the K7XX right here that we've reviewed before, and you'll see the similarities. So the design hasn't changed much, and it doesn't really need to, because you know what? It looks good, and it does the job very well. So not a whole lot has changed, at least in terms of the build. A lot has changed in terms of sound, though. We will get to that. But first, let's take a look at the build. Here we go. Lots and lots of plastic. This is a very light headphone. Primarily plastic. We got a plastic shell around the driver that is perforated, so this is an open back dynamic driver. It does breathe very well. It says right there on the side, if I can get the right angle. Oh my gosh. There you go. Reference headphone Q701, made in Austria. You have your one single end connector for the cable, which is a typical AKG 3-point connector. There you go. 3-point XLR. So it's not super proprietary. You can find them fairly easily. This is not the original cable. This is an aftermarket cable that I got originally for my K7XXs, but they share the same termination, so it works out fine. I do have the original cable. So it came with two cables. Again, let me remind you that this is a used pair of headphones, so this is not like original packaging. And the cables are a little janky, but they're this silly bright green cable. You get two of them, and this is the short cable, and as you can see, it's very long. Still has that 3-pin termination, and then it terminates at the other end to a simple threaded 3.5 millimeter. There you go. So you could thread on a 1/4 inch. It originally came with a 1/4 inch, but the guy didn't have that anymore. So he just has the cables, and that's fine because I have a ton of 1/4 inch adapters. But yeah, it's a pretty basic, just rubbery cable. It's very, very green. And then it came with an even longer one. So your choices are long or super ridiculous extra long. But hey, 2 cables for the price of 1. That's fine. It also came with a pair of extra pads. And the pads are the same. They're the same pad. You're not getting a different set of pads. You're just getting an extra pair of pads. And the pads themselves are a little firm. They're that typical kind of AKG sort of pad. They got that velour finish around them there. So it's soft velour, but the foam in there, it's not memory foam. It's just kind of a very firm, dense foam underneath there in this kind of ring shape. It's a good size here. Good 3 knuckles of space all around, and they do a good job. They do have a little bit of a proprietary clicking system to connect them, so that they can't really. You can't really replace the pads with just anything. You do kind of have to have something that will accept this clipping mechanism. So keep that in mind. Okay, going back to the shell here. So we got lots of plastic, a little bit of metal. There we go. A little bit of metal on some of the pieces here. You got your little Quincy Jones badge right there, I assume. Goes into the headband. The headband has these little wire headband. And the actual comfort strap is a suspension strap. As you can see, we got little suspension cords right here on the side that will stretch. And sometimes it gets a little stuck, but again, these, a used pair of headphones. You have your right indicator, left indicator. And then the comfort strap itself, it does say Quincy Jones on the top here, as we saw earlier. Quincy Jones. And it has this neon green stitching. You have your neon green stitching right here to match the cable. And then the comfort strap itself is a very, very firm strap. It's not real leather. It's not even pleather. It's like, I guess, just kind of a stamped plastic to make it have the texture of leather. But it's very, very firm. And on the underside, see those little bumps? Those little supposedly comfort bumps. They look like they're little cushions, but they're not. They are pretty firm. They give a tiny bit, but it's not memory foam. It's just like hunks of plastic to make little bumps. So we're going to talk more about that, but that's basically your build there. Just like with the K7XX is extremely light. Lots of plastic, very little heavy materials being used. Comfort. So they have a very similar fit to your modern AKGs. Modern AKGs are a little bit nicer though. See, a lot of it has to do with this comfort strap. This comfort strap kind of sucks. Oh my God. It's so firm, and these little bumps underneath it, they do bad. They do bad things. In comparison, here's the 7XX, and as you can see, it's a much more simple strap. It's still a firm, not leather, not pleather strap, but it gives at least a little bit more. And the suspension on this is a lot looser, which is interesting because these, I doubt, have been used as much as those. But the suspension feels looser, and there's no bumps underneath this. So what that means is when you put this on, it just kind of conforms to the shape of the top of your head, and it's fine. Fits there just fine. Unfortunately, with the Quincy Jones, that's not the case. You put this on and, oh, it's poking right at you. Not the best feeling in the world. It helps a little bit if you're wearing a hat, but otherwise, kind of wish they stuck with the plain, simple kind of strap. But hey, I guess lesson learned, right? Because this is an older headphone, and they learned their lesson. They got rid of those stupid little lumps. Okay, so the rest of the comfort, though, is pretty dang good. It's just very similar to what we had with the K7XXs. They're very, very light, so you're not getting a lot of weight. You still do get some pressure on the top of your head, so having those little bumps really gets to you. But their clamp force is very, very relaxed. It's not super pinchy on the head. The pads do get a little bit warm. At least for me and velour just don't mix very well. It tends to get a little warm for me. but plenty of ear volume in the cups, and they do stick on your head very well. They, despite how light they are and despite how kind of relaxed that clamp force is, they stick on there fairly well. If you're not, jogging down the street, you're going to be just fine. Yeah, so overall, the comfort, I don't remember what we gave the K7XXs in terms of our comfort cloud system, but I'm going to give these... I got to think a little bit extra about this because, man, that comfort strap here, it really, unfortunately, knocks down a couple points. In terms of our comfort cloud scale, I'm going to give these a 6. 6 clouds of comfort. If it had a comfort strap like what they have in their more current models, it would probably be up to an 8. They're pretty dang comfortable. But unfortunately, those little bumps, they're pretty rough. So yeah, pretty comfortable. The sound. This is where things get really interesting. This is an older set of AKGs. So what do we know about the current AKGs? Well, they're very warm. They're very relaxed. They're very... they got some extra low end in there. They got some velvetiness. They got lots of soundstage and amazing imaging, blah, 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 blah. Very, very good stuff. These are kind of almost the polar opposite of the AKGs in terms of their sound signature, which was very surprising to me because there's really not a whole lot of similarity going on here. While this is a very warm, relaxed, chilled out sort of experience, these are very intense. This is a very intense, very cold headphone. Not to say it doesn't have low end, it does. It has a good punchy low end that can hit into sub-bass territory. It's not the most extension, but it does a decent job. However, the primary focus is absolutely mid-treble and treble range. These are very bright, they're very crisp, they're very sparkly, sometimes getting a little too far into it even. But man, oh man, lots and lots of high, mid, and high details in this headphone. A heck of a lot more than you get out of something like the 7XXs. The 7XXs, they have that extra warmth and that extra low end, and that treble range is kind of cut off and rolled off to be a little bit more relaxing. They just let this go hog wild with that treble range. It's very fast, it's very snappy, it's a lot of detail. I was really, really surprised by the amount of detail I was getting in the high end. Mid-range is nice. It's a little bit less forward than it is with something like the 7XXs, so it's not as much of a mid-range performer. It's definitely not as much of a low-end performer. But, man, high mids are really, really pretty amazing. Lots and lots of just crisp, chirpy detail. It can get a little sibilant sometimes, especially in that high end. It can get a little too far. I was listening to some Nier Automata earlier today, and some of those squealing female vocals came on, and it was hard. It was hard to listen to because it was just a lot of sharp notes. But they're pretty dang cool. I'm enjoying the difference between the two. Soundstage. They don't have as much soundstage as the K7XXs. The K7XXs have a very nice, even, a little bit more than middle range soundstage. This is a bit more of an intimate experience. It's not super narrow. You do have some soundstage, but it is a lot more intimate than it is with more modern AKGs. So, a lot more intimate, a lot more intense with that extra treble range. It's an overall very intense listening experience. What they do share with more modern AKGs, though, that imaging. Oh my goodness. Just like with the K7XXs, which I praise to heaven with how amazing the imaging is on these, same goes with these Quincy Jones. The imaging on these is freaking fabulous. Fantastic imaging. So precise. It's all around you. And gaming with these is a pretty radical experience. It sounds so immersive. Even if it doesn't have as much soundstage as the K7XXs, that imaging is so good. It still sounds like you've got a good amount of space of where you are because you have that spatial awareness from the imaging. Awesome, awesome headset, even for gaming. Great, great headphone, yeah. An interesting characteristic, though. This is a dynamic driver headphone, and like many dynamic driver headphones, one would think, well, maybe I'm not I'm not happy with the kind of a bit more subdued low end I'm getting out of these. Well, what if I just drop them into a tube amplifier to get some of that warmth back? Ooh, not a good experience. These do not take well to tubes. I was really, really surprised. Putting this on a tube amp gave me a humongous amount of distortion. Like, I couldn't listen to it for very long because the distortion was so bad. And this is not a very distorting amplifier that I have here, and I've never heard that amount of distortion with any other headphone. Even these 7XXs sounded perfectly fine on the exact same amplifier, but the Quincy Jones here could not handle it. Not at all. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but these cannot take tubes. They just can't. It was so distorted, and the vocals were crackling. It was that bad. I don't know why that happened, but keep that in mind. These are not good for tubes, but they did excellent on a linear sound source for sure. It's just a very different sounding headphone. Things got a lot warmer. Things got a lot smoother and relaxed and chilled out with something like your 7XXs, but back in the day, you had some more crispy boys. And I like it. I really like it. It's a nice kind of contrast to what we have today. So, yeah, the Quincy Jones. I'm glad I got them. They were just, the guy was really happy for me too. Really happy that I picked these up. Because he's like, yeah, I had these on the wall for a while, and people, they don't seem to know a whole lot about them. And the lady that gave these to us, she's just kind of like, she had some new headphones and she needed to get rid of them. But I tried them out, and I remember I told him after I'd listened to them, and I walked up to the counter, I'm like, okay, I'll give him a home. And he seemed very pleased with that. So thank you again to Hawthorne Stereo. You guys are awesome. And the Quincy Jones. Cool little headphones. I really like them. That's about it. Have yourself a good one. Forgot to mention the price. I was looking at headphones that were $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in the previous video. How much did I spend on these? Like $150. But hey, that sometimes that's just how it goes.